Net zero is easy to say, but harder to understand. What is lacking is a shared definition that will enable us all to progress in the right direction. Through the development of ISO's latest international workshop agreement, which I think will start tonight, more than 1,000 organizations and people have signed up from more than 100 countries. This will put some guidance to the hands of regulators, businesses, and organizations of all sizes. What we need to do now is to re-establish our momentum. That's going to be enhancing our efforts and acting with urgency. In taking the right action, ensuring their resources are mobilized in the most efficient way possible.
Almost 50% of the investors should be the government. Then maybe followed by the corporate companies. Then finally, private sectors. So most important part should be how we try to encourage private sectors to be support for these investment.
It's an obvious and important one for us to all understand, and that is that supply chains cannot be strong when they are broken down and rebuilt every few years. So the consistency of the market demand and the ability for us to grow projects, build out supply chains, mature the players from small mom and pop companies giving us small components to large global players. Yeah, that's a good question because there is, and we've talked about it already in the last day, the significant amount of critical materials needed for this transition, 3 billion tons of these materials by 2050. And that sounds like a lot, but considering we're extracting 3 billion tons of fossil fuels every 10 weeks, but it's different, it's more visible, they're rare enough that they're widely spread in some sense.
Fiji has a very ambitious transition target, 100% renewables by 2036. I wonder if we might start by you telling us about how you think Energy Fiji and the country will adapt to that, how it will meet that, and what might be some of the challenges along the way.
Last year, especially when our borders were closed and the demand had actually come down, we did fairly well in terms of the mix, because we did 65% renewable and 35% fossil fuel. So we have good 40 to 50% to climb up, basically. Of course, on a yearly basis, there is a growth in demand, so we have to also cater for that. But presently, there is good potential for hydro development in Fiji, as well as solar farm. And as I speak, we are carrying out feasibility studies on at least 3 hydro projects. And the challenges are basically we need to get finance, perhaps on long-term basis, mean long-term loans at very attractive interest rates. And then we'll be able to go up the renewable energy ladder.
In Fiji, of course, you're very prone to cyclones. I wonder if you might tell us about the climatic challenge that Fiji's facing, how that might be affecting your rollout of renewables.
So during a cyclone, if the transmission line gets affected, then we are totally cut off from our hydropower plants. And that makes it very difficult actually to supply our customers purely depending on the fossil fuels. And therefore, we'd like to build redundancy in the transmission network side as well, because these days the customers are very demanding.
And if we don't take action now, if we're not able to, entrepreneurs like us, grow our business model at a certain pace, and many other, I guess, entrepreneurs and players out there, we are not going to make it. It reminds me a little bit of the Formula One race where you have a certain amount of time to change the tires, and typically I think it's about 2 seconds you get to do it right, but there's a huge amount of ecosystem management which goes into making those 2 seconds effective. We have very little time to get to 1.5 degrees centigrade. At a micro level, we need agility, and every stakeholder needs agility. So we need to be agile and pivot to be able to do what we need to do today to get to our rigid goals, and hopefully we will have well-functioning markets then.
What do we look for in markets? We look for transparent, fundamentally driven price discovery. That's the first thing that we're looking for. And if that price discovery is timely, that is even better. We got fundamental price discovery in the uranium market over the course of the 2010s, but it took 8 years from the Fukushima disaster to the trough in the uranium price. That is price discovery. It is not timely. It comes directly back to the mechanisms by which the bilateral trade in uranium was negotiated. Because there is nothing worse than a financialized commodity market that looks like a one-way bet. It will become expensive very quickly, and it will all be held by investors. It will not be held by end users. That's something we should caution against. We don't want to turn critical minerals into risk-on, risk-off assets that are traded on a daily basis. And I think the EUA market, the European allowances, is kind of in that territory right now.
First priority is we need a more clear-cut roadmap presented by the government in the region, governments in the regions. One government says by 2050 we will achieve carbon neutral, the others 2060, we have 2070 as well. So we need to, we may need to prolong the LNG market in accordance with the roadmap